Hi, this is Helen Kelly with DMA, and we will be reviewing the homelessness prevention component of your written standards training. So before we get into homeless prevention itself, we are going to just take a minute to talk real quickly about what the written standards are. Yes, they are required by HUD, but they also provide guidance for CoC and ESG programs related to service delivery and ensure that all programs are operating in a consistent and coordinated way that's compliant with HUD and CoC standards. They can be a very useful tool for you as you have new staff that comes on board, either due to building capacity or due to turnover. And just a quick note that if you have not already watched the trainings on standards for all programs, please make sure that you do watch that. This training is going to focus specifically on the homeless prevention component. And so what you will see in the other longer training on all standards is what will also need to be applied to homeless prevention. But since it applies to all of the other programs as well, we included that as its own training. In terms of the structure of the written standards, please note that first there are those standards for all project types that I just mentioned, and that includes things like record keeping and case management. And then there are standards by each project type. That's where you will see things that are specific, for example, to homeless prevention in this training. And then also if there's any deviation from the general standards for all program types as related to prevention or whichever individual project you're watching the training on. There are appendices, and that is supplemental resources that are referenced throughout the standards, for example, such as the HUD definition of homelessness chart. And then there are templates. This is a separate document. None of these templates are required, but they are available to you as a resource. So if you don't have some of these templates, you might want to create them. If you do have them, but you want to see how yours match up to these, please go ahead and do so. Or perhaps if you have a regional project and you really want to streamline how your grantees or subrecipients are reporting different things, then you might want to take a look at these templates as well. With that, we are going to dive right into the HPRE standards. Homeless prevention is not an eviction prevention project. Housing stability is the primary goal, and ESG HP is intended to prevent households from losing all housing and ending up in emergency shelter or on the street. As with most other project types, households will be screened for prevention resources through CE. If a household is identified at risk for homelessness per the HMIS assessment, the coordinated entry assessor will refer to prevention providers in their county. And these households, they will not be added to the prioritization list, also known as the by name list. Now, there may be more than one prevention provider in the county, such as ESG, someone funded by PHFA, SSVF. In these cases, the CE assessor should refer the participant to all prevention resources for which they are eligible. The CE assessor should make every attempt to make a warm handoff directly to a prevention provider agency. So this is what you can expect if you are providing HP programming. Now, upon receipt of the referral, the prevention providers will screen participants for eligibility. Participants fleeing domestic violence or attempting to flee domestic violence may be eligible for either homeless prevention or rapid rehousing resources, depending on their specific housing situation and the funder of those resources. The DV Assessment Center may make referrals based on participant choice and resource availability. Now, another note regarding DV is that for ESG, HP, or CoC Rapid, the person fleeing DV does not have to be literally homeless. Couple of other caveats that we want to put in here with regards to access is that prevention providers who receive other funding sources, they're also encouraged to use the prevention screening tool. If a prevention provider receives ESG funds or other non-CoC issued funding, such as Home for Good or FAIR funds, they'll use the Western PA CoC HP screening toolkit. To be eligible for homeless prevention, the household must be Category 2 or imminently at risk of homelessness, or fleeing or attempting to flee DV, which is Category 4. Please note that if they are Category 4, they should also meet the day allotment that's required with imminent risk of homelessness. On top of that, households must be very low income. So their gross annual income is less than 30% of AMI. Something else to take note of, not all HP households will remain in the same unit. In instances where an eviction could not be stopped, for example, some people may require relocation services. In those cases, no arrearages should be paid and the household should be rehoused within the HP project. This would, even though they're being rehoused, it is not rapid rehousing unless that household became literally homeless or otherwise eligible for rapid. But as long as that didn't occur, they will stay in the HP project and get rehoused within the HP project. In terms of prioritization, the prioritization screening is essential when an ESG project does not have sufficient resources to serve every eligible household. In general, resources should be prioritized for households who would otherwise be on the streets or in an ES or emergency shelter. And HP providers should use the Western PA CoC HP screening toolkit when prioritizing these households. For Category 2, the at risk of homelessness with a court order resulting from an eviction action that requires the individual or family to leave their residence within 14 days, that will be the first order prioritization, followed by other categories 2, 3, or 4. And for Category 4, this can include households who are experiencing domestic violence but are still housed. If an emergency transfer is needed due to domestic violence, the provider should offer an alternate unit within their organization's own inventory whenever possible. But if that unit is not available, the provider should follow the process outlined in the emergency transfer plan. Emergency transfer requests may be expedited or prioritized in order to identify a housing resource for which the household is eligible as soon as possible. And there is more on the emergency transfers within the written standards themselves. Now, switching gears, we are going to talk a minute about the documentation that's needed for homeless prevention projects. And anything that has an asterisk means that there is a template that is in the supplemental handout for the written standards. So there needs to be documentation of homelessness or at risk of homelessness. The landlord agency agreement is also required. A lease is required that's completely executed. Past inspections and a housing stability plan. If rental arrearages are being paid, there needs to be proof of the funds owed and that the landlord will cease eviction proceedings if those are paid. If utility arrearages are being paid, there must be proof of the pending shutoff, that the household is responsible for paying the utilities according to their lease, and that the bill is in the tenant's name at the address on the lease. There are some more details regarding the documentation piece, so please refer to the written standards for more details. With regards to duration and amounts that are to be provided of assistance, please note that the amount of rental assistance is highly individualized. The level of subsidy in general should lessen over time as a household is able to pay more and more and works towards stabilizing. There are obviously some extenuating circumstances such as job loss where this might not be able to occur, but generally that plan of titrating someone down off of the grant is what's to be expected. And most households should be stabilized within an average 6-month time frame. If someone needs more help than that 6 months, there are some justifications toward granting an extension, such as, like I just mentioned, someone with a recent job loss, a transition age youth, if a participant is perhaps paying fines, if a participant was recently incarcerated or hospitalized, or if a participant is waiting for a PSH unit or a housing choice voucher, and there's reason to believe that it will be obtained before a maximum time allowed for homeless prevention, which is 24 months. In no case may any homeless prevention rental assistance be provided for more than 24 months. Projects should be creating their own internal extension approval process for when more support is needed. Going back to the idea of the 24 months, I just wanted to go back and mention that that's within a 3-year time period. Also, please note that no fees can be imposed on any project participants beyond their payment of rent. Okay, what you are allowed to pay for: rental or utility arrearages for up to 6 months. If doing so will stop an eviction and prevent homelessness. And there were some more details about the arrearages on the previous slide. You can also pay for the first month's rent after enrollment, and that could be paid in full to assist the household. Again, commensurate with need, but chances are if someone is seeking out this program, they're going to have that need in the beginning. The unit rent may not exceed either fair market rent or rent reasonableness. Additional costs may be covered, but you're going to want to check your specific grant application guidelines for those. Income is reassessed quarterly for the purposes of eligibility and adjusting rental payments. If the household identifies as stabilized, they may be successfully discharged at any time. Some indicators of stability could be that the goals in their previously created goal plan are realized, that the household is paying rent in full or to whatever level was agreed upon in their plan, that their housing crisis is resolved, that the household feels as though they have enough support in place to maintain stabilization without ESG's essential services. Please refer back to the standards and the standards themselves, as well as the training for all project types for additional standards. Most of what you need to know for case management is in the all standards training, but we do want to reiterate again that exit planning should start upon project entry. and that you should be working with households to develop a housing stability plan. And those plans in this instances are reviewed monthly and updated every 3 months. In terms of performance measures, please note that there's no specific CoC-wide performance measures for homeless prevention. However, in general, programs should work toward stability in permanent housing as quickly as feasible, preventing future returns to homelessness, increasing income and access to mainstream benefits. And you can refer to your grant guidelines for more information on performance measures and targets. Okay, so most of these standards are not new, but if there are standards your program is not implementing, you'll need to make a plan in terms of rolling out that implementation. So the CoC is asking for all CoC and ESG funded programs to sign off by July 1st of 2021 that their programs understands the standards and will be implementing them. And then there's a couple of months where you could work on that rollout. The expectation is that if there are standards that the programs are not yet implementing, that that plan will be in place by September 1st, 2021. And then, as always, feedback is welcome, and we will be gathering that feedback year-round by following this hyperlink. Okay, finally, we just ask that if you have any questions, please feel free to email the Western CoC at pennsylvaniacoc.org. And just one last friendly reminder that if you have not yet seen the training for all project types, please go back and watch that at this time. Thanks.